I feel terrible because my Viper's been great, and this one's being a cantankerous monster that's trying to kill itself. Well, my 97 blue with white stripes Dodge Viper has been an iconic car for me. And I've kept it for a long time. Bought that thing back in 2009, had 19,000 miles on it. Right now, right about 100,000 miles. And that was the one that actually goes back to my very first VINwiki story of what was it? The supercar that got me kicked out of my small town. With that car being the one that I guess most known for, and I put the most miles on it and have enjoyed the most, it has that interesting story, kind of like the bird that flew away that came back. I've just always loved it because if you need to cruise around in it slowly, you can. If you want to go fast, you can. There's no BS traction control or ABS. There's no cruise. There's just nothing in the way. It's just a raw, exciting car that makes cool noises, and you can put it sideways at any time if you want. It's just been a really great companion to make memories in. But I'd always had a fascination or just a little soft spot for those very early Dodge Vipers. The first ones, the RT10s, red, the 3-spoke weird wheels, side pipes, no proper windows, no proper top, no door handles on the outside. You got to reach in. If you have the top on or the side curtains, you unzip the window like a Jeep or a 1960s British car and you open it up and you get in. And I remember vividly, I think perhaps our dad took us maybe like the Henry Ford Museum where little. So we're up in Detroit. And just doing car stuff, and we're coming back, bored as kids are in car rides. And being on I-75 in Michigan, I was sitting there. And I don't remember if my dad looked in the mirror and mentioned, or we saw it first, but we saw a red Viper on the highway, like in the wild, the first year. And it was a cold day. I don't remember the exact temperature. We had jackets on, everything like that. And here comes a red Viper, no top, 2 guys in it, just cruising up. And they were like super speeding, but they're coming up. And they come to pass the car we're in. We're little kids. And I remember looking over, and these 2 guys look like they came just straight off an Air Force flight line or something. Like, leather jackets, hat. One guy probably had aviators on, something patches. And I'm just like, I don't necessarily know what cool is, but that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. It's like an 11, 12-year-old kid. You're just like, yes. And I remember that, and you forget about it beyond that because my blue with white stripes Viper was always really usable. And the coupe's in many ways maybe a little prettier. It's a more usable, I don't want to say better car, but more usable in the real world. It's got windows that go up and down and door handles and locks. So it's suited it well. And I could never really justify, I would never sell that to get an early one, but I always liked it. A few years back, when we moved to the Toledo area, I had worked at this small classic car dealership for a couple years. And, you look out for, you got to have inventory, you got to find cars to buy. And I think it was maybe Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist saw an early Viper for sale. It was built in 92, VIN number like 00030. And there's some funny things about Vipers where the VIN number doesn't necessarily reflect the exact time they came off in the production. It might be like when it was ordered, but it was kind of cool and I remembered that. I go check this car out from the guy that owns it. Just, normal guy. It was this one cool car, had a little bit better exhaust. He'd done a couple things to it, maybe had a couple glitches, and car looked good. I don't think it was then, but he didn't want to come down to where I needed to be to buy it for the dealership, for the nature of reselling it. I think he called me a few days or a week later, and I just told him where I needed to be, and he said yes, drove the car over, made the deal for the dealership, and that was that. And of course, when a car comes in the dealership, you got to assess it and see what's going on. And I think I drove it home one night. The early ones don't like sitting in traffic because of the way the fans come on. So they can tend to get a little hotter. They're a little more prone to blowing a head gasket. So just some things like that that are easy enough to work out. And of course, they got a very bad rap from being too easy to wreck. And the simple truth is that they have a lot of torque and you can't be an idiot in it. You can't just stomp the throttle at any given time because you'll light up the tires and you better be ready for that kind of condition. Most people generally aren't and get a little more excited than their talent level can support in Viper. So that's really where that bad rap comes from. And, in later days, it comes from now the cars are vintage, effectively. You can put historic plates on them. And the trouble is, tires don't necessarily just crumble to dust. And there's people with Vipers like this with low miles that have 20-year-old tires on. They're hard as a rock. And that's obviously setting you up for the same kind of scenario. This car was good, but it just kind of the nature of the beast. But for the dealerships, so I have to go over the car. So took a couple little things to it. Sort of enjoyed it. Took a picture of the 2 cars together. That was kind of neat. Put it on the showroom floor and represent it. And a gentleman who was local to the area, a dentist, I believe, came and checked it out and knew his son, nice young man, actually helped at the dealership a few times, and he was really interested in it. Made a deal, he ended up buying it. And there's something in the back of my head like, this is the car I should buy. But I couldn't buy it. It didn't have the space, it didn't have the means at the time or anything like that. But I remembered it. So it went away, and every once in a while I would see them driving around. And the car was actually kind of a complete pain in my ass for a while. Because we'd sold it, and suddenly, like, the fuel pump check valve went out, so it would lose all its fuel prime. And then it would have to crank forever, or you'd have to turn it on and off until it would prime and then start. And then the fuel pressure regulator went out and suddenly would skyrocket the fuel pressure to like 100 PSI, and it was blowing out seals in the injectors and something else. And then after he bought it on its own, it sprung a fuel leak and caught on fire. It was just a little fire though. And fortunately, the guy had a fire extinguisher on it and put it out and it barely singed anything. And I'm just like, I'm in horrors because I sold him this car. It's as is. It's now a vintage car, but that's not what the kind of experience I want somebody to have. So I feel terrible because my Viper's been great, and this one's being a cantankerous monster that's trying to kill itself. But they were very nice people and understand. They were car people, motorcycle people, and it was fine. But I was just like, oh my God. And so the son, they had, and I think he was a teenager at the time when they bought it, late teenager. He would drive it. The dad would let him drive it. I'm like, I don't know if this is going to end well. I don't know these people, but this does not seem like the kind of car that you let a teenager bomb around in. Didn't really think anything of it. A number of years later, I bump into him every once in a while. I'd kind of say, hey, you still got my Viper? I mentioned to him, like, if you sold that, where would you be on it? And they weren't like trying to make a bunch of money or anything on that, just do it. And so I was kind of talking about it, but I didn't want to waste their time until I was really serious. But early this year, I started getting serious because obviously doing YouTube, I have a little more space and I'd sold a couple things. And I thought, if I'm ever going to get one of these things, it probably better be now because they didn't make many of them. I mean, I think the first year of Viper production, what did they make, like 250 cars or something? So started talking with them and actually, over a little bit of time, I just wanted to kind of see where he was and money on it. And actually ended up making a nice deal on it. I think I bought it for $31,000. Had 35,000 miles on it, and they took amazing care of it. They changed the head gaskets and all. And the son, who I was like, oh, I don't know how this is going to go, took amazing care of it. So I think it goes to show that sort of taught me something. I complimented them both on it. And the dad, I'm like, honestly, I didn't know it would be good, but your son took amazing care of this. I had actually financed part of it because I, wanted to make it happen, kind of add it to collection. I was excited. It's kind of neat. I don't really want any other Vipers, but if I'm going to have just two cars, it's pretty cool to have the blue with white stripes GTS and the early RT10. And so I said, well, I can pay on Monday, something like that, after work, and then we can get the car out. He's like, you don't understand. It's in storage in my brother's house. It's buried in the back of the warehouse on a lift with stuff under it. I'm like, all right, well, I can help you. And he said, I said, maybe be around, we could do it on Saturday. I'm like, all right. So it was a kind of an unseasonably beautiful day, like late winter, early spring this year. And go over there early in the morning and show up, and we just had a fun time and got to see some of the motorcycles and things they had that just were cool, kind of making friends. And the Viper was buried up on the lift under a cover, so we moved all this stuff together and moved some motorcycles out of the way and like lawn care equipment and everything, and get the car down. And there's a funny little thing those early Vipers do where they immobilize themselves, and you have to have a little jumper wire and like ground out one little wire for just a second. It makes everything chill out. So had to do that. And also I learned the joy of getting upside down and head first into the footwell of a Viper. Not actually very easily. But we go to get it out and moving the cars around. I say, all right, well, where would you like to put it? And we'll meet up on Monday. And he said, you know what? You can just take it today if you want. And I'm not going to jump on that because I don't want him to be uncomfortable in any way. And, we've made a deal. And I think part of the honor of buying a car is to not expect anybody to do something they're uncomfortable with beyond the terms of it. It's like, I'm just helping you get stuff ready. You can buy it on Monday. I said, well, actually, I already have insurance on it. And I'm like, do you want to see? So I just emailed him my proof of insurance. He's like, have fun. And I know it sounds like a little thing, but it was fun to kind of take a picture with the father and son. They enjoyed it. They had their fun. They were going to go on to the next adventure. But I suddenly got the opportunity to bring literally a childhood dream that were the models. They were that early vision you see in a dealership, the thing that sparks your lust as a car guy later on, but kind of that passing the torch, because they say you never really own a car, you just take care of it for the next owner or the next adventure. But it was a beautiful day, and it was really exciting to hop in the car. I'd already known that car. I know they took care of it, to just get in it and drive home. And my wife was home. It was a beautiful day. We had bought a fixer-upper home the year before, and it was starting to be less of a fixer-upper, so it felt good. And my buddy Andrew, from another story, he was along that day too, so I just go ripping home, and the stereo works. And it was funny because I get on the highway, and it's pretty cold, and I've got my jacket and like glasses and everything on, and it was a cold day on the highway, not much different than when I was a kid and I saw those two guys on the cold day on the highway in the same car when I was 11 or 12 years old. And so I turn on the radio, and what comes on but Ted Nugent, Stranglehold. And I'm like, yeah, this kind of works. I know that's just a story of the beginning of how the next chapter, kind of the little Viper family, comes together. And I don't really consider myself a car collector. I'm not trying to be a collector or hoarder, but it's kind of comes that way. But there's something really neat of having like two of the absolute most iconic American cars of the modern era. There's a throwback to another time, and it sort of reflects so much that I resonate with as a car person. And the thing about it is the blue car that I've had, I love the car. It was the car that I think was most synonymous with my personality and the most miles I enjoyed the most. And it got wrecked, and it went away, and I thought that chapter was over. And then it got bought from insurance, and the guy started fixing it, and then I was able to buy it back cheap from him and fix it up the rest of the way. So I had that story where it was kind of like the bird flew away, but came back. It was meant to be, you know? And now the Red Viper kind of has the same story. I was working when I had more modest means, just trying to sell classic cars, and bought this car to resell, and the people that bought it ended up becoming friends with them, and then later it came back much the same way. So there is the beginning story to another amazing chapter of Casey and the Dodge Vipers.
Shopping for insurance can be an absolute nightmare, but it doesn't have to be thanks to Policy Genius. They're our sponsor for this month at VINwiki, and you can visit them at the link in the description below. You tell them a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your property, and they find the best deal by shopping amongst all the major carriers at the same time. In fact, you can bundle things like homeowners insurance and auto insurance, and the average user that bundles both of those things saves about $1,100 a year. So be sure to check them out and thank them for their support of VINwiki.